In 2006, 39-year-old Jeana Lynn Burrus was living in Sarasota with her husband, James Burrus Sr., and their son, James Jr. Before moving to Florida, they lived in Frederick, Maryland. Jeana was a stay-at-home mom while her son was a student at Gulf State Elementary School. Unfortunately, her marriage was very tumultuous and was only getting worse. Sometime in 2006, Jeana would strangely disappear, and since James never reported it, it would go largely unnoticed. He then told James Jr. that his mother had run away and abandoned the family. He also told her family fake stories about where she was, and they never questioned it. On February 6, 2007, a teenage boy stumbled upon skeletal remains belonging to a female in a wooded area at the end of Ashton Court in Sarasota. The remains were found in a shallow grave, and due to the fractured skull, she apparently suffered blunt force trauma. Unfortunately, they were not able to identify the remains at the time, even after checking dental records and the breast implants that she had. Her breast implants were implanted before serial numbers were standard. Her identity would remain unknown for the next 16 years. Investigators believe the killer knew the area and chose this location due to the dense vegetation. Interestingly, James worked at a car repair shop that was located in the 5600 block of Sarah Avenue, which was directly next to the woods. He clearly knew the area well. In 2022, a woman in Maryland submitted her DNA to Ancestry DNA, and it resulted in a match to the Jane Doe found on Ashton Court. From there, they were able to prove the remains belonged to Jeana. James is now a person of interest in the case and has allegedly told many different versions of events. Sadly, James Jr. came forward and said for all these years, he was under the impression that she left voluntarily. While this case hasn't been officially solved, I'm sure it's only a matter of time. Regina Mae Armstrong was born in Orange County, Florida on March 16, 1979, to parents Bob and Donna. In 1985, 6-year-old Regina was living in an apartment in Orlando and loved climbing trees and collecting bugs. On June 18, 1985, Regina was at the babysitter's apartment at Somoran Trace on Somoran Boulevard. After lunch, Regina, her 9-year-old sister Christina, and their babysitter's young son decided to play outside. As they neared the apartment's courtyard, a man approached them and offered Christian and the young boy $2 each to stand watch at a nearby apartment where he claimed he and his wife lived. He told them he was taking Regina to pick up his grandchildren and promised to return within half an hour, but never did. Sadly, Regina had just participated in an Orlando police program that was designed to teach children to avoid dangerous situations with strangers. As time passed, Christina began to realize the dire situation, so she ran and told the babysitter what happened. However, the babysitter thought she was messing around and didn't go check. It would be 2 more hours before Christina was finally believed, and only after the babysitter's boyfriend had shown up. After Regina's abduction was reported to police, they began going door to door in the nearby Orlando neighborhoods. They also searched for her on horseback and with tracker dogs, trying to find any clues as to her whereabouts. Christina gave police a description of the man and said he smelled of alcohol. From there, they were able to produce a composite sketch and release it to the public. After being shown on the news, a 7-year-old girl named Erin from Cocoa Beach told her father that the man in the composite sketch was the same person who attempted to abduct her from her home just days before Regina was kidnapped. Erin had been sleeping in her bed when the man broke into the house and tried to kidnap her. Her 9-year-old sister, Elisa, thankfully woke up and alerted her parents. The kidnapper then dropped Erin and fled the scene. The same man was also a suspect in the abduction and sexual assault of a 9-year-old girl in St. Augustine. During a search for Regina on June 26, the remains of 32-year-old William Legg were discovered, who had been missing for almost 2 years. A promising lead would come in at the end of June from Jeff Smith, who worked as an assistant manager at Popeyes on Orange Blossom Trail. He told police that a man matching the composite sketch came into the restaurant with a can of ravioli, asking the cashier if they could open it. He looked at the man and then at the poster hanging in the restaurant and was certain they were the same person. He quickly called the police, but the man left and sped off in a brown car. Interestingly, Regina's favorite food was ravioli. Her family began to believe that she was possibly still alive. Police then received a phone call from a maid at a small hotel on U.S. Highway 192 who said that 2 men checked in with a small female child. She said one of the men resembled the man in the composite sketch. However, by the time police arrived, the men were gone, but they found a missing poster of Regina torn into pieces. Meanwhile, in Cocoa Beach, an 8-year-old boy was abducted from his home while he slept on the couch. He was taken about 50 yards away where he was let go and ordered not to tell anyone. The boy gave a description of the suspect, and the resulting composite sketch looked very similar to Regina's kidnapper. While police don't believe it's related to Regina's case, they do believe it's the same person who attempted to kidnap Aaron. As time went on, they were getting reported sightings as far away as Los Angeles, California. One of those sightings was at a Burger King in Harbor City. The assistant manager at the restaurant told police that she had seen a little girl who looked very similar to Regina come in at least 4 different times. Half a mile from the Burger King, workers at a donut shop and liquor store also reported seeing the same girl. Workers at all of the places said that the girl seemed afraid of the man she was with. Police decided to have undercover officers stake out the locations. After a few days, the man and the girl were located, but it turned out to be a father and a daughter and was not Regina. The man did bear a striking resemblance to the composite sketch, though. Bob and Donna eventually moved out of their 2-bedroom apartment and into a home where they set aside a room for Regina, hoping one day she would be found. In September of 1987, a child's skull, along with a dress, was discovered at a construction site in Oviedo, Florida, northeast of Orlando. The remains weren't immediately linked to Regina until the following year when a new police chief took over and noticed the dress matched the dress Regina was wearing on the day she was abducted. There was quite a bit of controversy around the discovery of the remains because the police chief at the time, R. Wade Hancock, placed them in a locker and forgot about them. Not to mention, this was one of the most publicized cases at the time, and it shouldn't have been difficult to link the remains to Regina. He never alerted Orlando investigators or tried to figure out who the skull belonged to. Hancock was later fired for botching the investigation into 2 different murders, arriving 2.5 hours late to a drug raid, and falsifying timesheets. Since it was impossible to identify the skull as belonging to Regina, they turned to Bob and Donna, who were both able to quickly recognize the dress. Due to the location of the skull, they believed her killer lived in Central Florida. In 2005, a potential suspect by the name of John Cooey was looked at. On February 24, 2005, Cooey abducted 9-year-old Jessica Lunsford from her bedroom in the dead of the night. He kept Jessica in his bedroom for 3 days, where he repeatedly sexually assaulted her. On the 3rd day, Jessica was still alive when he buried her. When Orlando police questioned him, he confessed that he had killed Jessica but denied being involved in Regina's murder. He was ultimately ruled out and died on death row from cancer. Unfortunately, all leads have since dried up, and as of 2024, this case remains unsolved. Tonya Lee Whipp was born on October 8, 1984, the youngest of 5 children, and grew up in Auburndale, Florida. In 2018, she moved to Venice, Florida, and lived there for 5 years while she worked at Pinch a Penny and Pizza Boss. In March of 2023, she moved back to Auburndale to live with her boyfriend, Russell Carroll, and his brother, Preston Irons. On May 24, 2023, Tonya and Russell were caught on video purchasing an engagement ring at a local pawn shop. In the video, everything appears fine. 2 days later, Tonya called and spoke with 2 of her sisters on a 3-way call. Unfortunately, this was the last time her family would ever hear from her. On May 28th, Tonya suddenly disappeared. Russell claimed that when he left for work, she was home, but when he returned later, she was nowhere to be found. She wasn't reported missing until June 29th. When asked why he waited so long, he said that she had disappeared before with no contact. 36-year-old Russell was immediately a suspect. Not only was he the last one to see Tonya, but he had just spent the majority of the last 20 years in prison for stabbing his 16-year-old girlfriend, Tiffany Ostrick, 14 times on October 15, 2003. He was then released on January 30, 2023, about 4 months before Tonya disappeared. Investigators got a search warrant for the home and found her belongings, car, and purse still there. Their home had surveillance cameras, but Russell claimed the footage had already been deleted when he checked it a month later.
Just worried, I don't know what to do. I mean, I just got out of prison, and now you go missing, so what am I to do now? Everybody's looking at me like I did something to you. That's the crowd I want to get from. People think I hurt her or did something or this and that. It's none of that. She just disappeared. I don't know.
Strangely, on June 1st, Tonya responded to her sister Robin's text message, but based on the wording, they don't believe she sent the message. Another person of interest in the case is Richard Oates. According to Nikki Cochran and her boyfriend Jake Ruby, Tonya was at her house with Richard for about 45 minutes. I'm not sure if they were at the house on June 6 or if it was reported on June 6. If this is true, then Richard would be the last to see her and not Russell. On July 24th, police received a tip that Tonya was buried near a trailer on Indiana Court in the Lake Blue Mobile Home Park, but once again, another dead end. Her family has spent months unsuccessfully searching through orange groves and woods for her. Sadly, as of 2024, Tonya is still missing, and this case remains unsolved. Nicholas Kyle Downey was born on January 1, 1986, and went by Nick. In 2023, 37-year-old Nick was a father of 2, living with his wife Holly in Gulfport, Mississippi, while his children lived with their mother in Kentucky. In February, Holly was in a rehab facility in Mississippi, and Nick was 600 miles away in Bradenton, Florida, where he worked. Later that month, he decided to take a week off from work to go visit her. He rented a Tesla through Turo, an app that allows people to rent out their cars to others. The entire round trip was estimated to take Nick around 4 days. He made it to Mississippi just fine and was able to see his wife. During his trip back to Tampa, on the night of February 26, 2023, he pulled off Interstate 10 to recharge the car behind a Dickey's barbecue restaurant in Marianna, Florida. After the car was done charging, surveillance footage showed the car with a single person inside turning onto State Road 71, heading south instead of getting back on the interstate. The owner of the car was watching Nick's progress and was concerned when he didn't get back on the interstate. He decided to send Nick a message which would have appeared on the car's dashboard but never received a response. He was scheduled to return to work on the morning of the 27th but never showed up. A week later, his family reported him missing. The next morning, the Tesla was found abandoned on a large hunting lease in Liberty County, Florida, parked between Turkey Creek Road and Prison Road in an area known as the Stokes Site. This location is about an hour away from the charging station in Marianna. When the car was found, it had little charge left but was still in working order. The windshield was damaged after it seemingly drove under a cable, with white transfer paint from the car being found on a cable about 1.5 miles away from where the car was found. Authorities contacted the person Nick rented the vehicle from, who was able to remotely unlock the doors. 2 phones were found inside, as well as a change of clothing and a drone believed to have been used for Nick's job. One of the phones was in Nick's name, and the other was in his wife's, who was still at the rehab facility where personal phones are not allowed. Investigators searched the area with a canine and a helicopter, but no trace of Nick was found. Unfortunately, as of 2024, he is still missing, and this case remains unsolved. Gail Ann Russell was born on February 11, 1965. In 1995, 30-year-old Gail and her boyfriend of 6 years, Larry Podolsky, were living in a trailer in Bayonet Point, Florida, with their 2 sons, ages 3 and 5. Gail and Larry worked together running a tree trimming business. On September 3, 1995, they dropped their 2 boys off at the babysitter's house early Sunday afternoon on their way to work. After finishing around 10 p.m., they went to Bobcat's bar for a few drinks. They stayed until around midnight and then left to pick up their sons before returning home. Once home, they tucked the boys into bed and then went to sleep. Around 1 a.m., they were suddenly awakened by a tapping on the glass window of the front door. Larry said Gail got up to check it out and he dozed back off. When he woke up that morning, he realized Gail never returned to bed. He quickly searched the trailer, but there was no sign of her. For some strange reason, Larry waited until Wednesday, September 6, to report her missing, but lied and said he tried to report her on the day she vanished. He claimed that when he called on the 6th, he was told to wait 48 hours. The police weren't happy about the accusation and showed proof that he never called. When Larry finally spoke with investigators on Wednesday, he said that everything seemed normal when they went to bed around 12:30 a.m. He said that $245 in cash that was meant for bills disappeared along with Gail. Investigators searched the trailer and found her contact lenses, driver's license, and other belongings. Larry admitted to having a problem with drugs and alcohol, but said their relationship was fine. He even claimed that he had proposed to Gail and she said yes. He also said they were making wedding plans for the following February. However, Gail's mother refuted this, saying her daughter was unhappy in the relationship and was making plans to leave and take the kids with her. As investigators continued to look at Larry, they realized there were more problems in their relationship than he was leading on. A few months before she vanished, in July of 1995, Larry was arrested following a violent drunken argument in the parking lot of a Taco Bell. However, like a lot of domestic abuse victims, Gail recanted her story and the charges were dropped. The court wasn't happy and filed a false police report against her. It's unclear if they followed through on those charges. Unfortunately, with no physical evidence to prove Larry murdered Gail or was involved in her disappearance, he was never arrested, and in 2008, he died of a drug overdose. Unfortunately, as of 2024, Gail is still missing, and this case remains unsolved.